Hello everyone, my name is Drew Sukup. On behalf of VMUG, I'd like to welcome you to today's phoenixNAP webcast, Foundations of ZeroTrust Security Cloud Architecture, presented by William Bell, the Executive Vice President of Products at phoenixNAP. Thank you for participating in today's webcast and for your continued support in the Global VMUG program. Before we begin, I have 3 quick housekeeping items to go over. First, today's webcast will be recorded and available for you on demand. You will receive an email with the on-demand link, so keep an eye out for that. Second, a Q&A session will follow today's presentation. All questions will need to be entered into the question window near the bottom of your GoToWebinar screen, and keep those questions coming. Me and William, we love to answer them. Third, there'll be a short online evaluation that pops up as you exit the webcast. Please take a minute and let us know what you thought of today's session and what you might like to see going forward. All attendees from today's webcast who opted in their information at registration will be entered into a raffle to win a $100 Amazon gift card. The winner will be contacted directly by phoenixNAP, so good luck. All right, let's get started with our second 2021 webcast. From beautiful North Carolina, William, I'll turn it over to you now.
Awesome, thank you, Drew. Thank you everyone for taking time out of your day to come listen to us talk a little bit about some great VMware technologies, a couple unique things that phoenixNAP is bringing to the market from a cloud services perspective. I hope that this is educational. We try really hard to make sure that we provide a great educational foundation for these webinars and people take things out of it, whether or not you want to use our services or not. Everyone on the call is in the VMware ecosystem. We are part of the VMware ecosystem, and this is part of our way of giving back. So with that, I'm going to jump over and start off with 2 poll questions. It's going to help me really kind of get a temperature of the crowd, try to understand who's on the call. That helps us gauge the conversation and target it specific to the people here. So it looks like there's a pretty healthy mix of folks. Oh, I had to build out that slide there. In the information technology arena, pretty dominant. Healthcare kind of coming in second. And education, government, and business finance all kind of in the way. I'll let that creep up to 60%. I know that the polls can be a little delayed and a little clunky, so give everybody a second to vote. All right, well, let me shut that one down and move on to the next one. So I'll try to get everybody in the mindset of information technology, and we'll touch on some other things as we go. Second one, how many employees are company? I'm just trying to understand, we have SMBs on the call, enterprises. That'll help me put everything in perspective. All right. I thank everybody for taking the time to click the button. I know it's hard. Everybody just wants to have these in the background and listen. So, but this really does help, and it'll make the time together today more valuable for everybody. So, okay, we had 21% up to 100, 30% to 500, 11% up to 1,000, and 37% over 1,000. So, quite a few what I would consider to be large commercial plus. That sounds good, and I think a lot of these technologies will apply to pretty much everybody. So, no worries there from a technology perspective. And with that, I'm going to roll right into kind of some of the basics. For those of you that are on the call that have never heard ZeroTrust Security before, not familiar with that concept, the idea is, blanketly never trusting anything and having continuous verification of what has been trusted in the past. And so ultimately, when you look at it from a network security model, you're saying, I believe that every single network communication pathway is a possibility for a breach to occur, whether that's some type of protocol hijacking. A lot of times it's really just like inadvertent ACLs and things like that get put in place and allow somewhat unfettered access to assets, and specifically outbound, right? So we're going to talk a little bit more about it today, but everybody's familiar with things like ransomware and general malware, and most of that isn't coming in through some type of persistent threat, external hacking, right? This stuff is getting into your network through allowable means, mostly email, people browsing websites, things like that. And almost always they rely on some type of network communication to be successful, outbound specifically. So once that piece of malware has found itself onto a machine or an endpoint, it's always trying to reach out to some type of command and control system. It's not 100% of the case, but it's certainly a lot of the case. And it may not do it very often. It may just be for like, you know, updates or basic commands of things that they want done. But it's important, and the network is a good place for you to stop those things in their tracks, but also detect them if it has some type of success inside the environment. So, you know, I think that that's one of the keys. And a lot of times when we talk about zero trust security, we're talking about a multifaceted approach to ensuring that both the network is secure, but also that the users inside the network are secure. And so when we look at like technologies like NSX, which we're going to expand a lot on today, and its ability to do things like microsegmentation, which is on the right over there, it really gives a huge amount of power to the network administrator or IT administrator inside of an organization to say, I essentially am going to dictate what talks to what. And that is the key to zero trust networking. You have to be able to explicitly say, I want this endpoint to talk to this endpoint. I want this endpoint to talk to this server or some place on the internet. And hopefully I'm going to be able to identify who's doing that and leverage that identity to make an intelligent decision. And so I think, you know, there's a lot of things we probably won't get into today, but there are some really cool things that that you can do with identity and networks together. And I think a core component of that is 2FA, MFA, right? So making sure that you have some type of multi-factor authentication of an identity is core to having trust that the identity is valid, right? And so if you can build on that robust identity capability and ensure, have a high level of assurance that you have the right authenticated users talking to the right endpoints over the network, you really build this pretty robust mapping of who's talking to what, what's talking to what, and when something's talking to something that you don't expect. And that gets to kind of the core, the monitoring side and the alerting side gets to the core of making sure that there's success with this type of implementation. All right, I'm going to shift over here and see if I can kind of unpack some of the value points that you get out of implementing these capabilities. I will say that what I'm preaching isn't easy. It's not something that's like, oh, I'm just going to turn it on and everything will be protected. It takes time and effort to really understand what things, endpoints, identities, etc., should be talking to what other things. And you have to build that mapping through some level of intelligence and artificial intelligence, some level of human interaction and approval, and time. I think that's the other thing that's important to talk about a lot, is that it takes time and observation to bring those types of policies to you, the administrator or the business potentially. But what do you get for doing that, right? You get this greatly reduced attack surface. I'm going to touch on it a little bit more as we go, but there are some really important examples of what lateral movement inside of a network can do to even the most secure organizations. People say, I've built all these detection capabilities. I've built this hard perimeter, right? I've got all this multi-factor authentication. I got this, I got this, I got this. But then, you know, ransomware hits them, and you know, the 15 servers that were on that same network segment together, that most of the time don't even need to talk to each other, right? Or if they do, they need to talk to each other in some very basic single protocol manner. They have unfettered access to each other, right? They're on the same layer 2 segment. It's a very, very common deployment scenario to say, I've got VLAN 1, VLAN 2, VLAN 3, not real VLAN 1, VLAN 2, VLAN 3, but for the purposes of annotation. So I've got 3 VLANs. I've got my, you know, whatever, my Exchange VLAN. Hopefully you're doing things like Office 365 by now, but I've got my Exchange VLAN, I got my SQL VLAN, I got my whatever VLAN, applications VLAN. And we see this all the time. Our customers do this all the time. And yes, those VLANs have ACLs, and sometimes they have inbound and outbound ACLs. So they've done something to try to protect it. But if one of those servers is infected, it's going to have unfettered access to everything else on that layer 2 segment. That is where technologies like microsegmentation are game changers. Truly can reduce the attack surface and the ability for malware or attackers, potentially, you know, doing manual activity, to reduce that attack surface and to limit their ability to move laterally and limit the ability for automated movement and spread of things, right? One of the things we see with ransomware is it's pervasive and tries to just take over everything, right? I infected machine 1, I'm gonna do a scan, I'm gonna find everything else I can talk to, and I'm gonna go try to infect that stuff too, right? Technologies like microsegmentation and NSX can really, you know, kind of stop that in its tracks. And we talk about that down there on East-West side. So not only the implementation of that from a security perspective is helpful, but some of the tools that are available in the VMware ecosystem to make that policy generation, technologies like VMware vRealize Network Insight, they can actually give you this huge boost in visibility that isn't only for security purposes. So you put these tools in place to help you create policies that are, you know, take all the heavy burden off of policy creation, but then you get all this other stuff. You get network intelligence that you've never had before, that you've never even dreamed you could know, right? What is talking to what and how in every finite, you know, little minute detail is available in tool sets like that. There's a lot of cool logging and analytics that kind of come with that. And then I think as I talked about the identity side, you start to get into extra benefits coming from insider threat protection. Why is Johnny administrator trying to talk to the accounting system, right? At 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, these are the capabilities that we help deliver to our customers in our cloud services, foundationally built on VMware and VMware technologies, but also you should be looking at, even if you're not looking at a VMware-based cloud partner to help you, right? So both sides of that equation. All right, so what does this look like? I mentioned insider threats. I think my team put this in here because there's really a lot of research going on right now around the growth in insider threats due to COVID and work from home and change in lifestyle or income. There's a lot of reasons for why this is occurring now, but I think if you talk to the analyst community, you'll hear the same thing over and over and over and over again. There is a growing concern that disenfranchised employees, whether they have lack of job security, whether like they feel they're being taken advantage of because they're always in the office, because their office is their house, right? There's severe concerns about that. And the work from home remote access components that were, for most companies, I would say, slapstick implemented during the March, April timeframes, they provide access to things that you wouldn't expect, right? In terms of people have access to things that that you wouldn't approve normally, and admins have access to all kinds of things because they've been setting up everything, as quickly as humanly possible, and some checks and balances have been bypassed. I think if you're all honest with yourself, that happened in your company. Like it just did. The people that are getting back to looking into these issues are the ones that are going to be the most protected, in the best shape as we start to turn the corner. And I gave a webinar actually on Tuesday about kind of the future of remote work and work from home from a security and networking perspective. And I would say that if you believe that it's all going back, that the genie's not out of the bottle, and that work from home isn't going to be, the preferred modality of the employee, but also the employer, people actually forget about the employer side of this equation. They're seeing how productive people can be when they give more hours to the company because they don't really understand the limits of work anymore. They're starting to see the lack of expenditure on office space, which just people kind of just take for granted. I don't think we're gonna everybody's gonna work from home and there's never gonna be offices. That's certainly not the case. But we're gonna see a lot more flexibility, a lot more data everywhere, a lot more mobility across the plate. This helps. This takes all the stuff that we talked about earlier, makes it more complex, and then ultimately increases the attack surface again. It makes the data more spread out, it puts it in different places, and it leaves you vulnerable to varying types of security threats. So, I talked about some of these insider threats and kind of what we're seeing in the market, right? All these things are public, but they're really good examples. Even the biggest companies that have the most technical teams, the biggest security teams, they fall victim to stuff like this, right? And luckily most of these organizations have robust detection capabilities in place, but I think this is a good way of saying no one is immune to this, right? No one is immune to this. Everybody should be looking at insider threats, especially in 2021, and taking it seriously. And Zero Trust Security can help. The Zero Trust Security model can help do that. So how do you get there, right? I think I've talked through most of these things, but I want to lay out a clear path for you to say, this is how you get from point A to point B. So it starts with identifying all types of access. And I don't just mean people onto a system. I mean network access, people to system access, people to the internet access, identifying those scenarios, mapping them, hopefully doing that smartly, because doing it manually is impossible. Trust that's the case. But using the tools at your disposal or in the VMware ecosystem to help you kind of map out those destinations and users and what they access, and then say, make policy decisions at that point. That's allowed, that's allowed, that's allowed, that's not, right? And you take all those policies and then you work to build your Zero Trust platform foundationally, at least in our opinion, and inside the VMware ecosystem on the NSX technology, to say, I'm going to implement microsegmentation to isolate my workloads and begin to identify identity accessing resource, right? So it's I would say it's not easier, but there's two kind of separate pieces to that. There is what servers need to talk to what servers, and or clients need to talk to what servers. And then there's who's on that client and have they been authenticated, and then am I going to let them in? So I'll give you an example. A machine that has no logged in user but has been compromised, and that compromise is resulting in some type of identity of a box administrator root or Windows administrator, local administrator access, right? There are ways to identify that as network requests are being made to say, I don't know who this is. It's coming from an endpoint that I trust, but I don't know who's on that endpoint, so I'm gonna not allow that network traffic. And that is kind of what takes you to those pieces. You then have to take that the next step and say, I want to be assured that I know who is on that endpoint, and I'm going to do that through multi-factor or two-factor authentication and have identity assurance at that point. It is John, I know John, and he's accessing this stuff. And then the thing that everybody forgets and never does is just ensuring that your employees not only buy into this capability, but also educate themselves regularly on how to just do the basics. Because I mentioned this earlier, this isn't easy. This isn't a one-time thing. It takes a consistent, a level of consistency to get to the right outcome, and your employees are a part of that outcome. So how do we fit in, right? How does pNAP address these things with their customers and the VMware ecosystem partners that we work with, right? We noticed a absolute division in the cloud ecosystem, probably 4.5, 5 years ago. And we said, okay, there's infrastructure as a service, there's platform as a service, there are VMware cloud services. We in fact have others that were earlier, earlier implementations than our data security cloud product. But what we found over and over and over again is that organizations were adopting cloud IaaS PaaS, almost always then leaning on an MSP, and sometimes adding a managed security services provider on top of that if the MSP did not have that capability set. And specifically as it pertains to security, right, it created visibility gaps. The MSSP has severe visibility gaps to the infrastructure layer, to the health of the subsystem, to the activities that are going on in the greater environment behind the tenant's deployment. And this is true in public cloud. This is true in our other infrastructure as a service system. So what we said was, what can we do about that, right? What can we do to help users and organizations create security through the design and occupation of cloud infrastructure? And so we said, okay, we're going to take the managed security services, the infrastructure security technologies, and the infrastructure as a service components, and we're going to marry them together. And we're going to provide essentially a community cloud that is built specifically for folks that have sensitive workloads, that have compliance-oriented needs, right? And we're going to help them have a one-stop shop for that. And then we work with MSPs that can live exclusively in the application ecosystem without truly compromising security to a great extent, and let those MSPs basically help customers, or customers help themselves on top of this platform. So modern, reliable, everything's cutting edge from the infrastructure itself to the net or the virtualization technologies that are in play, right? NSX, vRealize Suite, vSAN, you name it, right? The comprehensive VMware Cloud verified cloud platform, right? And if you're not familiar with the VMware Cloud verified badge, it is a very, very prescriptive badging process that VMware basically audits cloud environments to say this leverages a technology stack that we have verified as being what we expect out of our top tier cloud providers, right? And then you marry that with 10.5 years of doing this, right? phoenixNAP, for those of you that don't know, was one of the first 6 VMware cloud provider partners in 2010, 2011. And you take all that experience and you bring it forward into validation from VMware and our partners at Intel, and you create a very, very strong ecosystem that we're looking to make even stronger. I actually hadn't planned on talking about this, but there's going to be upcoming changes in the April timeframe that are going to allow us to implement even stronger controls at the hardware level, more than what's talked about on this slide, to help customers truly realize the benefit of physical security, virtualization security, and application security all in one place. So we take all of this secure by design thought process, we implement as many physical controls as we can to give our customers high levels of assurance that things are secure and validated. We build in application level security operating system level security, hypervisor security, network access security, and data protection. Like, you can't be in the environment unless you have those basic components. Our entry level package basically has all of those things, and we help make sure that our customers are taking advantage of them. So that's kind of where we're at from a architecture perspective. And then very, very soon, we're going to be adding even stronger controls, both on the hardware side and a new platform that we call phoenixNAP EMP that is going to allow customers to manage their cloud native secrets, generate tokenization of data, store sensitive material, key value pairs, whatever, and integrate with on-prem or hybrid key management systems, and do something that is somewhat unheard of in the cloud ecosystem, and that's actually allow our users to encrypt virtual machines in the cloud service with keys that we don't even know. So you have insider protection from the cloud provider as well. And this isn't every man product. I mean, we have customers from hundreds of VMs, probably just over 1,000 VMs in some cases, and we have customers that have 10 VMs, right? So it's just kind of a for everyone thing. I would say that if you are managing thousands and thousands of virtual machines today, that this platform is probably not the platform for you. But we have a ton of other kind of private cloud designs that I think are better fits and allow you to have more control and do more things yourself and tell us what you don't want to do, essentially, and let us handle those things. So you get security by design, very high value, quick time to value as well, right? So the migration capabilities that we have, the hybrid extension capabilities that we have from on-prem VMware environments are fantastic. I couldn't say that 2 years ago, right? But now your ability to actually migrate to this platform or stretch into this platform from on-prem is simple. And yeah, so I'll kind of leave it there and trust that it's a provider that knows what they're doing, somebody that has been doing this for a really long time. All right, So you got kind of two packages with Data Security Cloud, right? You got this Essentials package and an Advanced package. And on the Essentials package, it is what you would expect. It's exactly what I said. It's the stuff that is required to be in place for you essentially to be a customer. And we give that to you as part of the package. And then if you look at the Advanced side, you're adding this 24/7 SOC, incident management, internal vulnerability scanning, threat intelligence feeds, all these things that you're either doing today yourself or you should be doing. That's kind of the Cadillac deployment. And like I said, I stress that it's more affordable than you probably think. So it's one of those things where we try really, really hard to bring value to the equation of cloud computing. And I mentioned that we don't stop there, right? So we bring this whole plethora of VMware cloud products, disaster recovery. If you are not doing DR as a service, if you're still doing DR yourself, I think that's a mistake. I'm not saying that just because I'm in the DR business, but I'm saying that because if you truly look at the cost and the TCO of implementing your own essentially cold private cloud to replicate into, buying all of this equipment, implementing all this network, the network implementation, and then hoping essentially you never use the environment is a silly value proposition. So I don't take my word for it, right? Go talk to the analysts. And in that category, in the DR and backup category, Gartner does recognize phoenixNAP as being one of their top 10 providers in the North America. So I think that there's a lot of interesting ways that we can work with organizations that have VMware at the center of their platform and portfolio. I will say that this is kind of the time to get those questions in. If you want to get some answers directly from me today, toss those questions in there. I love to take questions, and we can kind of go from there. So I mentioned time in the VMware market and ecosystem, but also in the business, right? We are not just a VMware cloud company, right? We are a global data center and infrastructure as a service company. And our locations throughout the world help customers in their market or close to their market. And I kind of show this on the next slide. Bringing points of presence everywhere, having service delivery that is consistent across that the platform, and having intense network performance and network availability as part of that design, because we're not just a VMware cloud company, we're also a data center and infrastructure as a service company. We have a lot of scale that you won't find in the VMware cloud provider ecosystem. That is different, right? It's a different type of scale, and it can bring a lot of value, especially for executing on hybrid approaches to things, right? When you look at, hey, phoenixNAP, I just bought 100 servers to refresh my environment 2 years ago. I'm out of capacity, but my CFO is saying, I don't want to buy any more servers. I want to go to the cloud, right? That's a perfect use case for us, because we can literally park those 100 servers right next to a hybrid cloud environment and give you essentially zero, partial millisecond connectivity between the cloud and your on-prem VMware environment, and execute like completely on that hybrid story at that point. All right, my marketing team throws this in there. They hate that I call them out every time for doing that, but I'm gonna throw it up for you. If you want to talk to us about DSC or any product or anything, shoot. If you just want to have a conversation about security, smash the like button. If you're a YouTube, if you're a YouTube guy, smash the like button on saying you want to chat with somebody, and we'll absolutely reach out. I will tell you this: my teams are technical. The salespeople are probably the least invasive you've ever dealt with, because we're a product-driven organization, right? We build great products and services. We love to talk to people about technology. And if you have any questions that aren't even related to, what we do, we're happy to field those questions and provide advice. So back to that, if there are any questions, if anybody wants me to touch on anything they saw today, questions about security, just in general, I am happy to take those now. And go from there. Somebody asked, are we GDPR compliant? Absolutely. And taking that a step further, all of our cloud services in EMEA are executed by an EMEA organization. So we have a business and a headquarters in Amsterdam. So we're in, we have a BV there. We handle all laws and regulations, compliance around that, taxation, all the things that you could imagine. And in fact, even from a specialty perspective, for those of you that might be in EMEA or have offices in EMEA, many of our infrastructure gurus are in Europe as well. So about half of our organization is split between Malta and Serbia, and the other half of our organization is in the United States. Someone asked if we offer any cloud or IT services hosted in Azure AWS. We do not, but we regularly work with multi-cloud deployments. So all of the data centers that are that you saw on that list have connectivity to Google, AWS, and Azure, and we are always facilitating. We're always facilitating connectivity to those deployments so that our customers can put the right workload in the right provider. If you have a workload that is, you need to grow your environment 75x for 1 month of the year, like that's not the workload that you would put with me, right? You would have that capability through one of the public clouds and hyperscalers. If you wanted to do end-to-end AI ML kind of workflows, right? We don't have that product or service, right? So connecting to GCP can be very valuable, but running all of your infrastructure that stays on 24/7, that is, that needs all these levels of compliance, that you still need to integrate your own security tooling and services portfolio on top of, parking it in a public cloud, migrating VMware virtual machines and traditional applications to the public cloud just to sit them there and use it as cloud computing is not cost effective, right? These services that I talked about today, almost all of them in all cases are less expensive than public cloud ecosystem, provided the workload is of a consistent performance-oriented nature, right? And then we have other products and services that are not VMware centric that we didn't talk about today that we do have for dev test and things like that. And we're building some middle grounds between that, right? And so we're trying to figure out how do we provide dev, QA, sandbox environments and production environments to work harmoniously, right? And without sacrificing specifically on the production side, right? And I think that that's a place where the hyperscalers struggle today, is that people end up having to do a lot of things to their environment to get the levels of performance and consistency that they're used to on-prem. It's not impossible. It's certainly not impossible. Many organizations deploy all of production in Azure and AWS and Google. But what I'm saying is a lot of times it takes a lot of backbending. And then when you get to that final state, ultimately the cost is a lot more than you expect it to be. And that is, it's a hard journey. If you're doing application transformation and you're going to go into that modality and you want to build around a specific paths, as long as you're doing it with open eyes and saying, hey, look, I know that this application that I'm building will only work in AWS, and I'm fine with that, then that's fine. That's a business decision that you've made. We are taking a much more neutral approach to that, right? Where we are saying, okay, look, we're going to build infrastructure as a service, and that is it, right? And our customers have the ability to put whatever platform they want on there, and the open source community is responding to this every single day to say, I'm going to help organizations that want to remain neutral from the walled gardens of the hyperscalers. And it is becoming easier every single day to go it alone in terms of application service delivery and platform service delivery. And if you can do that, the infrastructure and the specialization of the infrastructure and the cost of the infrastructure starts to matter a lot more than which one of them can provide the best service to you. All right. With that, I'm gonna hand it back to Drew. Drew, thanks so much for having us. I hope everyone found this super valuable. If you have any more questions, please reach out. The sales team will get you in touch with me directly. Don't fear about that. If you just want to have a question for me, they're not going to badger you till the cows come home if you just want me to answer a question. So take it over, Drew.
All right, well, great. Thank you, William, for taking the time to speak with us today. As a reminder to our audience, you will receive a follow-up email with the on-demand link from today's webcast. To find out more about the VMUG Webcast program, visit vmug.com and check out the education page. We've got a lot of stuff coming up. Please make sure to complete the short online evaluation that will pop up as you exit the webcast and let us know how today's session went. And from all of us here at VMUG, thank you and have a great rest of your day.